morning, children. So let's continue with the chapter, the Browning version. Discussion about Mr. Crocker Harris. So Mr. Frank and Tableau sounds a little bitter and has been detained, okay, by Mr. Crocker Harris. So Tableau informs that there is an extra work. Mr. Frank is more than surprised to hear that Tableau is doing extra work on the last day before the end of the term. So Tableau is a sincere student. He is doing extra work given by Mr. Crocker Harris, and Mr. Frank, the teacher, is surprised. Tableau informs him that he had missed a day of a school the previous week due to illness, and so Mr. Crocker Harris asked him to do extra work in place of that. Mr. Frank tries to calm him by telling him that he would certainly get his results the next day for being a good boy. But Tableau feels the other way. He assures that such rules do not work with Mr. Crocker Harris, as he is not like other teachers who appreciate students who do extra work. So what happened is that Mr. Frank is trying to calm him by telling him that he would certainly get his results by the next day for being a good boy. But Tableau feels the other way. He asserts that the rules do not work with Mr. Crocker Harris. As I told you before, that other teachers used to give the results before the declaration of the results, okay? But Mr. Crocker Harris, the teacher, was very much abiding the rules, and he used to give results after after the principal declared the results. Only after that he used to give. And Mr. Frank is telling you will get the result soon as you are being a good boy, but Tableau is saying no, I don't think Mr. Crocker Harris will do before the date, okay? Because Mr. Crocker Harris always abide by the rules, and Mr. Crocker Harris always appreciate the extra work he does, the students does, okay? Tableau criticism of Mr. Crocker Harris. The day before Tableau had asked Mr. Crocker Harris about his result, he tells Mr. Frank about what happened. So Tableau is telling what happened when he asked about the result to Mr. Crocker Harris. He starts copying Mr. Crocker Harris' voice. Mr. Crocker Harris had told him that he had given Tableau what he deserved, no less, no more. Tableau is afraid that Mr. Crocker Harris would have rather marked him down for doing extra work. According to Tableau, Mr. Crocker Harris is a different kind of teacher. He is too strict and hardly human. Mr. Frank pretends to be unhappy but encourages Tableau to imitate his teacher once again. Mr. Frank asks Tableau at what time he was supposed to meet Mr. Crocker Harris. Tableau informs him that he was called at 6:30. Mr. Frank points out that Mr. Crocker Harris was already 10 minutes late. He suggests that Tableau could go off play golf. However, Tableau seems shocked at this suggestion and is scared that Mr. Crocker Harris might follow him home. Mr. Frank tells Tableau that he envies Mr. Crocker Harris because all students are scared of him. So what happened is that Mr. Frank envies Mr. Crocker Harris because all the students obeys and scared of Mr. Crocker Harris. And he even tells Tableau to go and play golf. Don't wait for Mr. Crocker Harris, he is already late. But Tableau is a sincere student, he is waiting for the teacher. Mr. Crocker Harris' personality. Tableau makes fun of Mr. Crocker Harris by saying that it would have been better if he were a sadist, as it would mean he had some feelings, but he is hard like a nut. He is heartless, he possesses no feeling at all. Tableau feels that Mr. Crocker Harris is all dried up and hates that people like him. Tableau finds it funny that in spite of all the crackiness, he somehow likes Mr. Crocker Harris. Tableau recalls an incident when Mr. Crocker Harris made one of his classic jokes. It was in Latin. Nobody laughed. Out of sheer courtesy, Tableau laughed at the joke. This proved to be a bad move by Tableau. Mr. Crocker Harris complimented him by saying that Tableau's Latin had improved greatly. Mr. Crocker Harris then asked Tableau to explain the joke to the whole class. Just then the door opened and Millie Crocker Harris entered. So out of courtesy, he just laughed at the Latin joke which he did not understand. Okay, Taplow. Now Mr. Crocker Harris, at that time he told Taplow to explain, but that time Mrs. Crocker Harris came inside. Okay, Millie Crocker Harris bring relief to Taplow. Millie Crocker Harris, Mr. Crocker Harris' wife. So Millie Crocker Harris is Mr. Crocker Harris' wife. Okay, she's thin, she's in her late 30s, she's smartly dressed, unlike other schoolmaster's wife. She comes in unnoticed. Taplow was still imitating Mr. Crocker Harris when Mr. Frank noticed her. The broke off suddenly. Taplow gets frantic and asks Mr. Frank if Millie Crocker Harris could have heard the conversation, and Mr. Frank thinks that she did. Taplow fears that if she tells anything to Mr. Crocker Harris, then he will surely get a bad result. So now what happened? Mr. Frank also, the teacher, noticed, okay, and now they are thinking that might the wife heard about talking about Mr. Crocker Harris, okay, and this might cause bad result for Taplow. Millie Crocker Harris asks Taplow he was waiting for her husband. She further informs him that her husband is busy at a Bursars and might get late. She asks him to leave. Taplow is doubtful and says Mr. Crocker Harris had particularly asked him to come. She advises him to go away for a quarter of an hour and then comes back. Taplow is scared and asks what if Mr. Crocker Harris come back. Millie Crocker Harris gives him relief by saying she will take the blame. She gives him a prescription and sends him to the chemist to get it filled. Convinced, Taplow accepts the proposal and leave happily. So finally, Taplow leaves, okay, because Millie comes and says that Millie Crocker Harris says that Mr. Crocker Harris will be late, and if he comes, she will be taking the blame, okay. And this is the end of the chapter.